Hey guys, Bungie just dropped another big info bomb on Bungie.net about Lightfall weapon changes, and I figured I'd make a quick video to cover all of it for you with timestamps and a few thoughts sprinkled in here and there. According to senior design lead Chris Procta, the changes mentioned here will be focusing on heavy weapons for PvE, adding subclass verbs to exotics, and other stuff under that vague big PvE umbrella. First up, when playing on console, your reticle will turn red when it's over an enemy that is inside your weapon's effective range. They apparently like that as a visual aid, so they will be enabling that on PC moving forward. In the future, you'll be able to customize the color too, if you care about that. Here's one that I think we all saw coming. Linear fusion rifle changes. Linears currently outperform other heavy weapons for boss damage by a wide margin and have had plenty of time in the sun. At the same time, exotic heavy linear fusion rifles don't do enough to justify using one over a legendary. To correct that, they're reducing damage versus champions, mini-bosses, bosses, and vehicles by all linear fusion rifles by 15%. However, Sleeper Simulant and Queenbreaker are unaffected by that change. In theory, that could make Sleeper a really viable DPS option going into the new raid next month. Moving on, machine guns have been buffed a few times, but only in PvE. They're upping their base damage a little bit, which makes them more forgiving to use in PvP. The buff also applies across the board in PvE. PvP damage is typically the base, and PvE has multipliers on top of that. They're also substantially increasing machine gun reserves, giving them higher uptime. Increased damage by about 10% with the following effects on time to kill against a player with tier 6 Brazil. Slightly shorter time to kill across the board, except for the adaptive frame machine gun, which is unchanged. Increased reserve ammo by 50% at 0 inventory stat and 20% at the 100 inventory stat. By the way, if you didn't know, the inventory stat is a hidden number, but the TLDR is that machine guns with high reserves are going to benefit from this change with even more ammo. Heavy grenade launchers haven't been touched in about how long Yamama has been, and are below other heavy options in the damage department. On top of that, they're kind of hard to consistently land shots on a moving target, and they may hit fewer targets with the explosion than you would expect. With the following changes, heavy launchers should be more useful in PvE and easier to use in both PvP and PvE. Increased damage versus champions, mini-bosses, bosses, and vehicles by 20%, miners by 40%. Improved projectile collision, making it easier to land hits. Increased blast radius by 1 meter, which is not a ton at all, but you know what, I'll take it. And Parasite is unaffected, which is probably a good idea because it already hits like a goddamn truck. 20% extra on bosses is a lot of damage, by the way. If I were you, I would now be going through my vault with a fine-tooth comb looking for any remotely cracked heavy launcher to bring into day 1 PvE or the Lightfall raid. I'll be looking for stuff like full court, spike grenades, you know, the usual. But let me know what you have in your vault, just out of pure curiosity, of course. By the way, can't help but notice that Parasite is called out for not getting a damage buff, but the Anarchy isn't. Does that mean we could possibly get, dare I say, another Anarchy meta in Lightfall? I don't know, but I'm definitely not ruling it out. Update, as I was writing this, Bungie apparently clarified on Twitter. Anarchy time, baby. Moving on, we have shotgun changes. The new shotgun reticles show the current spread pattern, but in its shipping form, the size of the reticle wasn't affected by the current spread angle, which will change if you jump or with mag options like smoothbore. This change should make the reticle accurate in most ways at 85-degree FOV. A change to make this accurate for all FOV options will come in a future season. Shotgun reticles now change in size proportional to spread angle, and the nut cannon, aka the Acreus hipfire reticle, is now a bit more representative of its very large spread angle. Kinetic weapons. Kinetic slot weapons have always done 5% more damage on unshielded targets in PvE. That meant kinetic slot stasis weapons were straight up better with extra functionality and no downside. We wanted to give players more of a reason to run kinetic damage type weapons. So instead of a blanket kinetic slot damage boost, we're swapping over to a kinetic damage type boost based on whether your kinetic weapon uses primary or special ammo. Kinetic primary weapon damage multiplier going up from 1.05 to 1.1. Kinetic special weapon damage going from 1.05 to 1.15. Kinetic slot stasis weapons no longer have the 5% damage bonus versus unshielded targets in PvE, and there's also a kinetic damage type perk coming in Lightfall. I'm way more interested in that final bullet point than anything else. A kinetic damage type perk. Whatever it is, I hope it's good. Moving on to exotics. As mentioned earlier, Bungie's goal is to incorporate more 3.0 verbiage into exotic weapons to give them extra functionality and let them tie into subclass builds in a more meaningful way. Queenbreakers' blinding effect was underwhelming for a heavy weapon, and I agree, so they are changing it. Shot now chains to nearby enemies and uses Arc 3.0 blind. Gotta admit, that does sound really fun. I don't know if that change alone will make me want to use it over something like a rocket rocket launcher in PvE, but we'll see. Ruinous Effigy feels very voidy, and slamming the Transmutation Sphere was an obvious place to put in an additional effect. Transmutation Sphere slam attack will now suppress. That seems very fun too. Again, don't know if it'll be enough to make me an Effigy main for any activity, but I'll wait to get my hands in the dough. Leviathan's breath buff from a few seasons back inadvertently reduced the PvP damage enough that it could no longer one-hit kill players in their roaming super with a headshot, lol. They're fixing that, but also adding Volatile and increasing the damage done to champions to substantially highlight the anti-champion role. Now applies Volatile on perfect draw impact, upped the damage from 396 to 442, allowing it to once again one-hit kill all supers in PvP, increased damage versus champions by 30%. Gonna be completely honest, I think if you go into PvP with Leviathan's breath with the goal of trying to goose people out of their roaming super, you probably need to be given a white coat and go live on the happy farm for a while. But I will admit, I'm really interested in being able to deal an extra 30% damage to champions. That's actually very interesting. Pair that together with a volatile, strong Void 3.0 build, and I see that being a lot of fun in PvE. 1000 Voices was briefly a top pick in Season 14, but has been eclipsed by other options. They want to lean more into a chain of solar explosions by adding Scorch, and with the global heavy weapon changes, it's also a strong option. If you've got Ember of Ashes equipped, landing a full burst on a single target will trigger an ignition immediately. Each explosion now applies 10 plus 5 with Ember of Ashes, Scorch stacks. Really hoping this makes the 1K a damn good option for PvE again. I've always kind of really liked it as a weapon and think it's fun to use. Again, I'm gonna admit it's gonna take a lot of changes to get me and the boys to unequip rocket launchers and one Gallarhorn right now in PvE. That's a really strong combo, but I am hopeful in having it pair really well with a Scorch 3.0 build. Sunshot was a top candidate for applying solar verbs, and they're leaning into making more things go boom. Explosion on a kill now applies 10 to 5 Scorch stacks. I do think that'll be fun in PvE with the Solar 3.0 build. Not sure if I'm gonna fully lean into using Sunshot for PvE though. Polaris Lance has always had a burn effect, so it was an obvious change to switch it to Scorch. Perfect fifth on the Lance will now apply 40 plus 20 Scorch stacks instead of a custom burn. I've already actually been kind of digging Polaris Lance lately, just for the memes. Actually kind of hyped for it to now officially apply Scorch. Two-Tailed Fox had tough competition as an exotic heavy weapon, but now it's the only weapon that can apply subclass verbs from multiple damage types without extra steps. Solar Rocket now applies 60 plus 30 Scorch stacks instead of burn. The Void Rocket already applies Suppress, and the Catalyst completes the trifecta. Bungie out here with the big blue ball, by the way, not telling us exactly what that new exotic Catalyst will do. Although the word trifecta makes me think specifically that it might have some kind of arc verbiage thrown in. Maybe with the Catalyst you'll fire a third arc rocket, but then it would have to be called the Three-Tailed Fox, right? Maybe if you hit both rockets you can reload and then your next barrage will also get Volt Shot? Unsure, no idea. My mind is running wild with possibility. Let me know what you think it'll be down in the comment section. Prometheus Lens has utility with its Solar 3.0 rework, but we wanted to give it something more spectacular on kills in addition. Added the Incandescent perk to the exotic Catalyst. Let's fucking go. I think of all exotic changes so far, I might be most hyped about this one. I'm not sure. Incandescent is just a great weapon perk to be paired with Solar. One of the reasons I love the Callus mini tool so much. Definitely gonna think about using Prometheus more in Lightfall. Grand Overture is not getting touched in the damage department, which is cool. Only getting the Catalyst switched over to use Arc Blind. Nice. Hipfire Reticles. Bungie is starting to experiment with hipfire weapon reticles, conveying more information and used the Manticore as a test bed. You can expect to see more weapon type or exotic weapon functionality showing up in hipfire reticles in Season 21 and beyond. Added a reticle element to the Manticore showing current stacks of anti-grav repulsor. Nice. Kinda wondering out loud what other information Bungie could add to weapon reticles if they wanted to. Current AE value of the weapon you've got out? Maybe? I don't know. But moving on, weapon perks. With Strand coming into the game, along with a new Strand weapon damage perk, they're updating a couple of older perks. Osmosis now works with Strand. Yay. I was kind of expecting that to happen anyway, but good to know for sure. Elemental Capacitor now has the following effect when using a Strand subclass. Plus 20 airborne effectiveness, plus 25 if you have enhanced. Boy, oh boy, can only imagine how many of you out there hearing that information are either rolling your eyes super hard or chuckling sadly as Bungie continues to kind of forever lean into the AE system that not many people enjoy. I guess at the very least, the latest buffed version of the AE system that rolled out is IMO much better than what was originally rolled out. Wewind Wounds, where the fuck did that meme come from, by the way, will be appearing on more weapons than Lightfall, but was custom built to only work with Vault of Glass weapons, which I find really weird and interesting. Never even imagined for a minute that would be something tied into only one particular family of weapons. Anyway, rebuilt Rewind rounds to work on non-Vault of Glass weapons. Eager Edge apparently has a few bugs which are getting ironed out. No longer deactivates when moving faster than 35 meters per second. Deactivates correctly after a single melee swing. Reduced the base lunge distance buff from 2 to 1.8. Reduced airborne lunge distance penalty from 25% to 20%. And the enhanced perk now increases lunge distance slightly back up to 2. I think PvE players and speedrunners especially are going to be happy about that very first part. No longer deactivates when you're already moving too fast. I am by no means a speedrunner at all, but I think a lot of players were very annoyed about the initial change to Eager Edge, so the fact that it's being undone is probably good news to that crowd. Almost at the end here, blinding grenades on launchers don't do arc damage, so rather than tying them into Arc 3.0 blinding effects, they're going to rename them to disorienting grenades. And finally, Veist Stinger is one of the most desirable origin traits in PvE. Hard agree on that one from me, to the point where it makes it hard for non-Veist weapons to compete in the sandbox. It needed a little adjustment, and with the new change, when activated, Veist will only reload 25% of the mag rather than the entire magazine. Oof, that is a relatively heavy blow to the Veist origin traits, but I do get where they're coming from. Bungie ends the article by saying they're already hard at work on season 21 and 22. Some of the changes they're making include adding a full auto melee accessibility setting, a passover weapon type, and exotic weapon hipfire reticles, including increasing how visibly they change even at high FOV, and adding features like charge meters and exotic perk counters. They've also got balance changes in the works, interesting, but it's a little too early to get to them, unfortunate. More info to share post Lightfall, I'm sure. I'll be honest, that's a fair amount of weapon changes and shakeups right there. My initial first reactions are as follows. Wow, I can't believe rocket launchers made it out of this completely untouched. I definitely figured LFRs would get knocked back a wee bit before Lightfall, and now that they have, again, with no info on changing rocket launchers, I am full steam ahead on going into Lightfall with rocket launchers as my go-to DPS method. The only chance my plan gets altered in any way would be if the 20% buff to grenade launchers made them as viable or more viable than rocket launchers, or if we got some kind of beast armor mod on the artifact that was so good it would make some other weapon type the go-to option, like a weakened clear for sniper rifles or something. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Can't wait to hear from you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on stream.